all those moments will be lost in time.
Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to discuss something I've been wanting to discuss for a while. So if you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, you'll know that I went on this self-improvement retreat with my mother, and I went as her emotional support because I think it's bullshit, but we'll get into it. Let's start with the basics. My mom has a life coach, and his name, this is a code name, is Blake. Blake is a fraud. I think Blake is an absolute hack. I told my mom since day one, this guy is ridiculous. And as my therapist said, anyone can call themselves a life coach. Also, my aunt looked into a course of certification to become a life coach, and it's a total of 2.5 hours. So if you want that as a career, you can do it today and be certified by tomorrow, it turns out. Calm down. I just had coffee and I'm just like, so my mom has this life coach, Blake. He charges an inordinate amount for someone who doesn't have any degrees in like psychology or anything of this sort. Like, we're talking about $600 or $700 an hour, which I think is absolutely insane. But anyway, I said that I had an off feeling about him. My mom then went on a retreat with him last year with my aunt and a group of other people, of course. So they went on that retreat. My mom had a good experience. The retreat is marketed as self-improvement specifically for CEOs. So it's specifically for people who run a business and have a lot of really intense responsibilities and have a lot of people working beneath them. So it's catered to them. Positive experience, apparently. So she asked me to go on this second retreat with her, with Blake, in Bali. So let me just say one thing. All of the participants, except one or two, were nice people and were smart people, and none of this is a reflection on them. So when I'm talking about this retreat, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people running it and my experience. That's it. I'm not judging any of the participants there because they were all nice and smart people, which is why it was confusing, like why they would listen to this idiot. But anyway, I agreed to go to Bali with my mom, and I'd already been to Bali, so I knew it was a beautiful place. So I was like, you know what? Of course, the central reason was to be an emotional support for her. So I did the 40 hours of travel to get there, and I was very clear with my mother saying that I don't support Blake. I don't support what he's doing. I think that he's a hack, and that's why I ran a background check before going on this trip, because I was like, I want to know what this person has done. It turns out that the name he's going by is not his real name. Like, he changed his first and last name, which wouldn't necessarily be a red flag if it just were that. But then I also saw that he started a lot of businesses. I saw that he had debtors, so people he owed money to. And the background check doesn't give you all that much information. It's not like they explain the context of everything. So I still tried to keep an open mind, though I was like, this is bizarre. The point of me going was to be a critical eye and to look at it and say whether I think it's legit or not, being inside the situation rather than far away. It is to be noted that Blake also wanted my mother to invest in his company which does these retreats, which I thought was also a terrible idea. The people running this were Blake. So Blake had a partner in this business called Sam, and then they had these two kind of like secretary type women who we won't name because it's not important, but they both reminded me of Manson girls, like long hair, flowy dresses, very hippie, very creepy. It creeped me out. I don't know, it just made me feel off. So when I first met Blake, I'd talked to him via video chat once for a life coaching thing my mom did. Not important, but I'd never met him in person. And as soon as I met him in person, I got Jerry Maguire vibes. And I mean that in the worst way possible. Like, you know, at the beginning when he's slimy and you don't like him because he's just kind of like a shitty kind of like salesman type personality. Well, that's kind of how I felt with Blake. And I just felt very uneasy immediately. Also because he had this habit of hugging everyone, and I don't just hug you. If I don't know you, or if I don't like you already, I'm not gonna hug you, first of all. And he kept saying, I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're here. And they did this thing, everyone. Him, Sam, and the two women secretaries always did this really annoying voice. Instead of having their natural, normal voice, they'd be like, it's important to like really sometimes let go and disconnect from your pain. And I was just like, Why are you talking like that? Why? Wow, I'm getting like really angry. So a couple of things happened on this trip that made me feel extremely alarmed. And I'm not gonna call this group a cult. I'm gonna just say that they have very culty traits. The first night we were there, I had a full-on panic attack and started crying at dinner, which was great. Pretty much all the other participants, there were I think 18 in total, saw that, so that was cool. Mainly because as much as I can laugh about it now and as much as I can be fired up about it now, when I was there, I felt extremely isolated, just uncomfortable, for the simple reason that, as far as I knew, everyone seemed to be buying the bullshit. So the first night they were talking about what we're gonna do for the rest of the week, you know, like the daily schedule, what time we wake up, whatever. Everyone there just seemed to like eat up all the bullshit he said. Like he could say the most basic platitude and people would be like, oh my God, like he could really say live, laugh, love, and someone would be like, and that alarmed me. That really alarmed me because I was like, this guy could say the sky is green and everyone here would agree. Mind you, we were in Bali at this point in the middle of fucking rice fields. There was nothing around us. It took hours to get to where we were. So the first night, we also were supposed to get blessed by monks. I was okay with, even though I'm not a religious person, because for me, blessings are just good intentions compared to, you know, like actually participating in religious rituals, which we'll get to because it's very important. Mind you, this was not marketed as a spiritual retreat. It was marketed as self-help. There was no implication of any religion or spiritual shit. So we're sitting in like 3 rows and I'm at the end of a row and it's like nighttime. It's pretty much pitch black out. And the monks bless everyone except for me. They forgot me. And it was very humiliating because like they were packing up and then my mom was like, wait, you forgot her. And so like everyone turned to look at me, be like, oh, and it was just really not a moment for me. So they end up blessing me. And my mom was a little bit annoyed at Blake at this point because a lot of logistical things went wrong, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but essentially it was supposed to take us 2 hours to get to the place in Bali, and it took us 5 because they forgot to send a car for us. It was a whole thing. So my mom was already not super happy with Blake. Then when they forgot me, my mom was like to Blake, this is your job to make sure that everything's in order, you know? So the next day, we have this kind of therapy session. And mind you, our days were from 7 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m. straight activities and always being with people. Like you had maybe 1 hour to yourself. While we were having this therapy session, we're all sitting in a circle in this like weird hut thing that also was deeply unsettling to me because it was like there were candles. It looked like something was about to be sacrificed. And so we had this therapy, and in the spirit of keeping an open mind, I participated in everything I could except for one thing, which we'll get into. So when we were having this therapy, we had like 3 questions we kind of had to answer. First, why we were partaking in this retreat. Second, what a high point in our life was now and a low point, like specifically in the moment, like what's going well for you, what's going badly. When I had to respond as to why I was there, I was just very honest and I said, I'm here to support my mom because realistically, you guys probably can tell I would never go on a trip like this. It's just not my jam. I keep self-help on my shelf and that's it. And therapy, which is probably what other people who are in this should be seeking because I feel like this guy's not the answer. So I said that a high point was that like my job is going well, my marriage is going well, and a low point was that my mental health is not going well. And I got like teary-eyed saying this, which is so embarrassing because I don't like crying in front of people I don't know, even though I've cried on camera before. I just don't like it in person because it's really awkward and then people try to cheer you up, but they don't know you, so they don't know what to say.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Also, I kind of wanted to be the badass there because I was the only heavily tattooed one and I just really dropped the ball on that. And another thing I said was that I also felt a bit of anxiety about being there. I was very open about that because everyone had a specific purpose and I was just there as a supporter for my mom. So I kind of felt like I fit in less, okay? So it makes you feel outside. So my mom then has a talk with Blake. I can't remember about what, one-on-one. I wasn't there. Blake has the audacity to tell her that the night prior, the monks hadn't blessed me because they could tell I wasn't committed to being there and that I didn't really care about being there, and so they chose not to bless me because they could tell. Quick note, so I talked to my mom about this conversation, and a quick clarification. Apparently what he said was that the monks, it was like they didn't see me because I was only there for her, so it's almost like I was invisible, which honestly to me is just as bad, but I just figured I'd clarify that. Needless to say, that's bullshit. My mom tells me this, and of course I'm irate because first of all, I think it's pretty committed for me to just leave everything, pre-film everything, edit everything, do a 40-hour trip to be there for my mom, to me that shows enough commitment, but I digress. Understandably, I'm irate because I can tell that Blake is trying to manipulate my mom because he's trying to make her think like I don't give a shit and I'm just kind of there. It was just kind of disgusting to me because I really did open up in that therapy session. Like I cried. Like, I really did open up, so it really made me feel like shit that he was just like, ah, yeah, she doesn't care. And I'm like, I participated more than some of the participants, but go off, Blake. At this point, Blake is really just on my shit list. Like, I already didn't like him before, but after this, I'm like, no, honey, it's not working. Everyone had to write a bio in third person, which sounds so douchey. Everyone had to write a bio, and some people had like blocks of text. I had like 3 lines because I wanted to be as vague and as anonymous as possible. We also had an outline of our schedule, even though it ended up changing, and it was all quite detailed, right? So it was interesting that they left this out. So when we're there, we always pretty much ate every meal together, and they were like, oh yeah, so we want you guys essentially to try to be vegan this week. And I was like, I don't really have a problem with that. I eat vegetarian 99% of the time, so I didn't have a problem, but I just thought it was weird that they wouldn't tell us that before. Pretty big aspect to control in someone's life, what they eat or don't eat, especially because it was a fixed menu, so it's not like you could pick. It was actually pretty good. But they also had another rule, and this one bothered me more, where they were like, yeah, we think you shouldn't drink alcohol this week, and I was like, bitch, if I have to listen to your bullshit for 24 hours and I can't have a mojito or a glass of wine, really? For a lot of people, myself included, this was partially a vacation because you're taking time off work. So it is kind of a vacation even if you're working on yourself. So I'm like, if I can't have a drink, like one, I'm not talking about getting slammed or hammered. I'm really just talking about one drink. I didn't like that. I didn't like the controlling aspect of like, you decide our schedule, you decide when we eat, you decide when we drink, like, can I breathe? You know, like it just felt very constraining, especially because we had very little free time. So it was just a lot to be asking, especially for me, where this is my job. I make my own schedule. I eat what I want when I want. And if I want to have a fucking drink, I'm going to have one. And here all of a sudden, I can't control any of it. Whatever. It's altogether concerning, not just that by itself. Okay, so his last name, his fake last name, like the name he's going by now, he chose a last name that sounds Italian, but it's not Italian because I'm Italian. Italian's my first language. I know an Italian last name when I see one. The type that sounds like it would be, but if you actually know, you know that nobody has that last name. My mom and I were talking with this other participant who was Italian, so we're all speaking in Italian, and he comes up to us and he's like, oh, it's my Italian crew or whatever, and he's like, you know, I'm Italian as well. And I had to laugh because his real last name is Irish, and my mom knows that because I told her, and my mom was like, really? Because she was just testing him now to see if he would tell her the truth. And he's like, yeah, don't you know my last name is... And my mom's like, yeah, I want to talk to you about that. So then they go off and we're about to go. For some reason, we had whitewater rafting that day, which was fun, but completely irrelevant compared to the purpose of the retreat. But anyway, my mom goes to talk to him because she wants to confront him about the fake name thing. And he says, oh yeah, everyone in California changes their name, which I'm like, I don't know anyone who's changed their name. But if you want to rebrand, that's fine. But if you want my mom to be an investor, it's probably better to tell her that before rather than after, when me does a background check and I find out and then I tell her, because then you automatically look shady. He just says that everyone in California changes their name and he thought it wasn't important. And my mom understandably was annoyed because she's like, if I'm going to be an investor, you need to be transparent with me. You can't just like hide things. It doesn't really inspire a lot of trust, does it? It's also like, what could he be hiding about the company? The last thing that happened before whitewater rafting is my mom told Blake that I was pissed at him for the monk situation. Blake has the audacity to say, oh yeah, people get sensitive when you hit a soft spot. And I'm like, yes, that's definitely what it is. It's a soft spot. It's not you being a manipulative prick, but okay. It's also important to note that his partner in the company, Sam, he actually used to teach at a very, very, very prestigious university. So like he was viewed as the intellectual, but it turns out I don't think he's an intellectual. On the contrary, I think I'm not gonna get that shady. I don't think he's an intellectual. I think he just says platitudes and people are shook. Like both him and Blake are as deep as a 13-year-old girl on Tumblr. That's just it, okay? But anytime Sam spoke, it was like he fucking created the universe. People are like, legitimately, this is something that Sam said, so you can judge for yourself how deep he is. He said that in life, there's good and bad, and there's dark and light. And I'm like, yeah, we know, like, this is not brand new information, but he'd say it with the voice, like in life, there's darkness and there's light, and it's our job to find our purpose through that. And it's like, bitch, we know, like, we know. I can turn the lights on and off. Yeah, light and dark, we got it, okay? So Anyway, another thing to be noted, you know how I said there were like 18 participants? Well, it turns out that a good number of those participants are actually people in training to work for Blake in this company. So a bunch of the people who did therapy with me never said they were soon to be employees, so they're essentially on payroll, but acted like they were participants. So it's like they were very much manipulating the narrative, right? Because it's like, if you're sitting in a circle and someone's talking about how much Blake helped them and how great he is and everything, and then you find out they're on payroll, you're just kind of like, so is any of what you're saying true, or is your name? Like, what is the deal? And we found this out via myself, my mom, and the other Italian person that was with us talking and adding up shit we all separately found out. So they never were open about that. At the end of the retreat, my mom called Blake out for this. Then the next day, there was a spiritual thing, and that's why I said there was no emphasis on the spiritual in the descriptor and the selling of this retreat. It just said it was for self-improvement. We were supposed to go and partake in an emotional cleansing. Now, like I said, this wasn't marketed as a spiritual retreat. So I was kind of confused as to why in a self-improvement retreat they would kind of impose spirituality, especially because there was no agreement with all of us that we were all spiritual or that we were all, you know, in the same boat. So I was kind of surprised that they would kind of impose that as like the whole day in the schedule too. So I was like, so the more I found out about this ceremony, the more I didn't want to go. Simply because if I don't believe in something, I'm not going to partake in a ceremony. I find that deeply disrespectful. That's, to me, it's equivalent to going in a church and doing communion when you don't believe in God. I stopped doing communion specifically because of that. So I didn't want to partake in another ceremony where I flat out don't believe any of it. Just think that's a shitty thing to do, and I opted out. But Blake tried to make myself and my mom feel guilty for not going to that by saying, oh, are you just gonna chill by the pool while we do our cleansing? And it's like, if I don't believe I'm going to be cleansed, why would I just go to that? That seems more disrespectful to me than anything else. Throughout the retreat, there were a lot of moments of this kind of weird imposed spirituality that I was like, where is this coming from? Because they never mentioned anything about, you know, connecting with a higher spirit or whatever. That made it feel all the more culty. Let's talk about the cult red flags here. There's control over what you eat, drink, do, and your schedule of the day. There's a pushed narrative about what you should believe in and connecting with a higher purpose. We're in the middle of nowhere, so a little bit vulnerable and at risk. Like where we were in Bali at that point was in the middle of nowhere. Then after we changed and went to a city, but until then we were in the middle of nowhere. During the retreat, we had speakers come talk to us, and a lot of these speakers were people who once worked for massive, massive companies such as Google. Google wasn't one of the companies, but of that immense size. So the people who were coming to talk to us were people of high rank. And that's an important thing to note here too. Everyone here was a CEO or had money, okay? So there was a very, very specific kind of participant. And a lot of these participants, and I'm not going to go into detail because this is not my story to tell, had gone through some seriously traumatic, life-altering shit, okay? So everyone who was here was in some way hurting to various degrees. So that's also the cult list of taking people who are vulnerable and trying to help. Towards the end, Blake realized that I was not on board with all of this. I was respectful the whole time. I never called anyone out. I really just told my mom as we went, this is weird, this is weird, this is weird, and I made jokes about cults with her and the other Italian person because it really did feel like a cult. But he could tell that I was just not on board with it, and I think he knows that I'm trying to stop my mom from investing anything to this day. So I really did not want to interact with him because he just made me feel uncomfortable. He always tried to pull the hug thing to the point where I pretended to be on phone calls when he'd come so he wouldn't hug me. So I feel like I got a little bit heated, and I took a little break, and I'm still heated, but I'm gonna calm down. So the bottom line is that we need to be extremely careful because my mom is not a stupid person. None of the people who participated are stupid people. It's that when you're a con man, you can really sell something that doesn't exist to people, and that's what he did. And he continues to do it because these people all want to find meaning in it. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way where you'll say, I'll deliver this, and people are so convinced that you will that they have this kind of placebo effect of, yeah, you delivered, when in reality, he didn't. And that's what's concerning. None of these participants are dumb. It's that he's appealing to whatever problems they have in their lives so then he can take advantage. And I'm not okay with that. So I'm sorry if this video was a shit show. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys next time.